KLW's on the frontline through the battles and the pains, with a camera in the fray and the world on our screens. We're the voice of the silence, the witness of the scenes. Headlines flashing bright from the shadows we arise, with the truth in our hands under perilous skies. Every story told is a battle we fight. Through the darkness and the fear, we bring the light. In the chaos, in the flames, we'll stand tall, with the courage to reveal through the rise and the fall. From the embers of the war to the echoes of the call, we're the eyes of the world and we'll never stall. KLW, we're the warriors on the front lines. Through the blood and the fire, we'll define the times. In the heat of the battle, where the truth lies, we're the voice of the war and the world will find. From the ruins and the wreckage, every story's told. Through the tears and the heartbreak, the bravery unfolds. In the darkest hours, when the world's torn apart, KLW brings the stories straight from the heart. With the cameras rolling through the wreckage and the pain, we capture the reality while the world remains. Every angle, every moment in the line of fire, we're the pulse of the battlefield, never to tire. KLW, we're the warriors on the front lines. Through the blood and the fire, we'll define the times. In the heat of the battle, where the truth aligns, we're the voice of the war and the world will find. KLW, we're the warriors on the front lines. Through the blood and the fire, we'll define the times. In the heat of the battle, where the truth aligns, we're the voice of the war and the world will find. Through the smoke and the ruins, we'll pierce the veil. With every breath we take and every tale, we're the heartbeat of the conflict in the shadowed frail. With KLW's vision, the truth won't fail. Stand firm, we're the beacon in the fray. Through the dust and the fury, we'll light the way. In the fight for the truth, where the heroes lay. KLW, the story's here to stay. KLW, we're the warriors on the front lines. Through the blood and the fire, we'll define the times. In the heat of the battle, where the truth aligns, we're the voice of the war and the world will find. So here's to the courage and the tales we unfold. In the heart of the conflict, our story's told. KLW, with the truth we hold. In the fire of the war, our legacy bold.
You can't handle the truth!
KLW World News coming to you live here this evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Inventor Wheelbarger, and we're going to give you the news that nobody else can. Before we do that, well, we're going to jump back in history to almost 50 years ago, and this is something that you'll learn here and you won't learn other places, is that, well, the police officer that played Starsky, well, he actually hated the car. In fact, he used to abuse it. He wanted to drive a green Camaro as opposed to a red and white Ford Torino. Additionally, the company that produced the show was actually sued by the two police officers. You see, the producers that produced the show actually hung out with two New York Police Department detectives who were Lou Toleno and Joe Sepe. And after the company that produced the show had produced it and sold it to ABC, they gave no credit to Lou or John. So Lou and John ended up suing the production company and getting a measly $10,000 each. Talk about being ripped off. That's right, they ripped off the cops. But hey, we give you the insight that you can't get anywhere else. Now, that's the reality of that. let's talk about what is, well, how should we say, altered reality, what AI is doing.
This is Bert, a 98-year-old veteran of World War II, and this is Patrice, a 28-year-old left-wing activist. What do you think of Patrice's views?
I think it's a disgrace. In 1945, we didn't liberate the camps to invite the Nazis back into our country in 2026.
What do you think about what Bert has said?
This old man is clearly a fascist and a racist. He supports Israel and therefore supports genocide. People like this should be in prison.
Need I remind you, I stood up to Mr. Hitler and defeated fascism. You, on the other hand, are persecuting Jewish people. You, sir, are the fascist. Fascists don't deserve medals. It's time to teach you what your parents didn't teach you. I may look old, but don't mess with me. It was my generation who saved the country. This generation is a disgrace. When are you going to wake up and see what you're doing? Stop with this division. Britain thrives on unity and togetherness. We need to come together and protect Jews from hatred and hostility. There is no place for hatred in Britain.
Now, the interesting part about that video is 100% of it is fake. That's right. That entire video is all 100% AI created. Now, somebody asked me here, do I still support Trump? What do you mean, do I still support Trump? I support the United States of America no matter who the president is. I just call it like it is. I don't support any presidential candidate over any other presidential candidate. If they fuck up, I call it out, period. So just want to make sure that you guys know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and you get that here. Also, speaking of the truth, a lot of people are saying that the U.S. Navy has ran out of food, and they're putting out pictures like this one. Now, it doesn't matter which ship they say it is. As soon as somebody proves it's not that ship, well, then they change the name of it, because first they said it was the Ford. Well, there's one small problem, and that is the Ford doesn't use these trays. That's right. The Ford has white trays with angled corners, and it doesn't have indentations in it. The trays on the Ford are flat, and everyone on the Ford eats out of bowls and off of plates. And so first they say it's one ship that's serving this meal, then it's another ship that's serving this meal. And you know what? I've eaten worse. So I wouldn't be complaining too much, but it looks just too staged to me for this to be true. So may they be on MREs or something of that nature? Absolutely. That's possibly true. But the crew is there to fight for America, not to have gourmet meals. And oh, by the way, if you don't remember, just a few months ago, these same folks were complaining about how well the Navy and soldiers were being fed when they got steak and lobster and so on and so forth. These same people that are having the conniption now, well, they were having a conniption then. So there's a lot going on in the world today, and we're going to try to break it down for you. The U.S. has now left Syria. That's right. The last military base in Syria, the convoy left just hours ago.
Well, what it does is it provides validation for the whole world of what Ukraine has achieved.
Sorry about that. So, in the Gulf War, or excuse me, since this conflict has taken place in the Gulf, when those countries are being hit by Shahed drones, did they call the U.S. for help? No. They called the Ukrainians, because nobody in the world is better prepared and knows how to deal with Shahed drones any better than the Ukrainians. So all of those Gulf states, when they needed help, they didn't call the big bad U.S., they called Ukraine.
Well, what it does is it provides validation for the whole world of what Ukraine has achieved. Again, when the Gulf states, and in some cases U.S. military, have had some challenges in countering the Shahed drones sent to them in the Gulf region, who did they call? Kyiv. Why is that? Because Kyiv has demonstrated the best ability in the world to conduct counter-drone operations. And so I thought it was a masterstroke. It was genius for President Zelensky to go to the Middle East when these countries are under attack, just as is Ukraine every night, and to bring expertise and bring drone interceptors to help these countries defend against the same kind of drones that were given to Russia that have provided so much damage to Ukraine. But with Ukraine now intercepting at least 90% of those drones in a very impressive manner.
Now, speaking of drones, this is the latest and greatest from the Russians. This is their new counter-drone system that the Russians are deploying. That comes on this nice little trailer here, extends up, and the Ruskies can deploy it. That's what it looks like in all of its glory. Now, don't think it's going to survive very long because, well, the Ukrainians have some capabilities that, well, the Russians just don't have. And to tell you that, no other than General Ben Hodges, who has been a guest here on the channel. And so here is General Ben Hodges, former NATO commander, talking about how well the Ukrainians can defend against Russian drones. Again, stuff you don't hear on any other channel, you get right here on KLW World News.
The Ukrainians, I continue to be impressed with how well they have figured out not only how to stop Russia's ground operations and even push them back in certain places, but also their ability to hit Russia's oil and gas production and export capability. I mean, that to me really is path to victory for Ukraine. Is no matter what the price per barrel is, if Russia does not have oil and gas to export, then you know leads to the inevitable collapse of Russia's ability to fight the war. Now, when does that happen? Not this year, I don't think. But, you know, what would really be helpful would be big investments by European countries into Ukraine's defense to help them produce to scale this long-range precision strike capability they've developed.
Now, the interesting part about these Shahed drones that are landing in Ukraine, well, guess what? They're filled with American components. That's right. The Ukrainians are finding drones that have been shot down, and those drones contain American parts that are actually new American parts straight off of the assembly line. Somebody needs to look into that. Now, something else that needs to be looked into is the 51 intelligence officials who signed the letter claiming that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. Where did that information come from? The CIA. Was that information accurate? Absolutely not. In fact, And again, something you'll not learn hardly anywhere else other than here is the whole thing was staged. The whole thing was put together. And this gentleman here that you're about to see is going to point out something that I've been saying for a long time. None of them ever had access to the laptop, and none of them had access to the information on the laptop. Imagine that. Exactly how does that work? How can you testify to something that you have never seen or experienced?
Let's talk about the letter regarding the Hunter Biden laptop. I know every single one of the 51 signatories on that letter. Every single one of them was a Democrat. And not just a Democrat, but a Democratic activist. And that didn't used to be the case at the CIA. I remember working with a woman.
By the way, one addendum to that. Mm-hmm. Not one of them ever saw the laptop.
Oh
no one
God,
ever examined the laptop. They didn't know anything about the laptop.
And it was such mealy-mouthed CIA language that it bore all the hallmarks. Of a Russian.
They got a call from Tony Blinken.
Mm-hmm.
Sign this. That was in the lead up to a debate with Trump.
Outrageous.
It is outrageous.
Let's talk about the letter regarding the.
Yeah, the whole thing is outrageous. It's not nearly as outrageous as what's going on in Los Angeles with the fraud that's taking place out there. Well, all over California as well as Minnesota. Folks out there are just ripping off the government for millions of dollars per day. That's right. We're going to tell you about it.
Real estate's a very easy industry to like skim money off the top of. You can do a lot of illegal stuff you can do within real estate and no one's going to follow behind. I have a couple of developers that are just doing really sketchy stuff. If there's a project with a lot of money involved in it, someone's going to try to steal something. I mean, we can't figure out where all the money is going.
So there you guys go. Zero financial oversight for an organization that failed its own audits for 18 years. I was writing notes again as I'm watching this back for a second time, and it's just absolutely insane. But this is just government, right? I feel like, and I was watching this and I was like, oh my gosh, this is just like Austin, who accidentally, failed their audits and kind of like potentially, misplaced $279 million. Whoopsie. To talk with me more about the California fraud is my friend Brett Cooper. I'm very excited about this. Now, Brett has lived in California herself. And Brett, after watching this, I just want to throw this to you and ask, how surprised are you that this is what's going on in California?
I'm not surprised at all. I was watching the tape as I prepped to come on here, and I was rolling my eyes because, number one, now this is something that we are seeing in states and cities around the country, but also this is so par for the course in California. And what made me laugh so much is earlier this week when people on X were talking about the Medicaid fraud that is happening, obviously, in California as well. Gavin Newsom put out a post and he was like, we're working on it. I'll get to that. And it's like, you've been in office since 2019, and now as you're about to leave, now you want to work on it. And so there's just so many levels of corruption, and I'm not surprised at all about anything that I heard. I was taking notes as you were and doing some quick Google searches, and there have been so many other instances of this in California. One, even back in January of this year, there was a $23 million charity scam where, California taxpayers footed the bill. A developer was given $23 million to build low-income housing, and he, instead of giving them food and building these developments, he gave them ramen noodles, apparently, and then pocketed all of the money for a $7 million home. It's just, again, not surprising in the slightest.
That's just so California, Brett. And You know what? I want to ask you a more serious question too here, because I know you stated on your show, what's the point of exposing this fraud if nothing is going to happen? I mean, what is Gen Z's feelings toward the government right now? And what are your personal feelings and thoughts on, again, exposing this fraud and then the government's response to it?
I say it on my show every single day now, but I'm just exhausted. I feel like I'm almost like apathetic about it. Like, I've been angry. I've been frustrated. I've wanted justice. And then, we got Trump in office and I was so hopeful that we were going to be, shaking things up. And obviously a lot has happened that I am happy with. And I'm obviously happy that he's in office versus Kamala. But I look at the situation, I'm just like, every day it's something new, and there's no accountability. Like, we're just letting all of this happen on every level. And maybe there's just so much fraud that it's, it's too much to try to combat, but it's really disheartening. And that's what I'm seeing in my audience. And when I spend time on social media, it's just people coming together on both sides of the political aisle and saying, this is just, we're tired of it. Like, it's both parties. I have so many folks who are liberals and who are on the left who watch my show who go, I'm just grateful that somebody else is, calling it out, and I don't agree with you on everything, but I can relate to just feeling frustrated. Like, I feel that with my own party. I feel that with Republicans. And so it's just, I think people are disappointed and they are exhausted.
I completely agree. And, regarding the accountability, regarding the mass arrests, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that we're going to see anything from the government at this point? Is it like we'll get what we'll get? What are your thoughts? Do you think that mass arrests are going to happen at any point?
I don't know if they will, honestly. I don't think that they will in the manner that they should. I guess I should say that. I think that we might see, more arrests over the next 3 years, but in terms of the justice that actually should be served, I don't know if we will get to that point. Like, I do not expect the next California governor, maybe we'll get a Republican in California, who knows? But again, it's kind of two sides of the same coin at this point. But I don't expect, because of this investigation, unfortunately, the California is going to turn a new leaf and start arresting people and, actually taking their audits into account and wondering where, taxpayers' hard-earned money is going. It's, and unfortunately, maybe I'm just black-pilled in that sense, but I think we'll take what we can get. It's better than the other alternative, but the amount of justice that should be served, I don't know if we'll get that, unfortunately.
Well, I think there will be justice coming. And I talk to people about Trump, and I have some insight. I know people who have actually worked with Trump, who've done business with Trump, and done business with Trump for years or been around Trump for years. In fact, my father was a Trump fan. Now, Trump served his first term, his first 4 years. He was then, according to some, cheated out of his second term, and Biden was installed. So he had all of that time, those 4 years, to think about what he was going to do during his next 4 years. And during the 4 years when he wasn't president, as well as the 4 years he was president, he was regularly attacked by the Democrats. They put together all kinds of hoaxes and things about Trump that weren't true. Those documents were hidden at the FBI in Washington, D.C., up on the 7th floor. They were stored in burn bags. Those are normally reserved for classified documents that have outlived their need to know. However, when the Trump administration took over, those documents were still there, and the folks at the FBI, some good folks at the FBI, were ready to give those documents to the Trump administration, of which they did. Now, Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, well, she's got those documents, and she's going to make them public.
Director Gabbard, thank you so much for being here. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Katie. Thanks.
So, of course, there is an ongoing war and ceasefire with Iran. President Trump this morning talked about potentially the war being over soon. We had the CIA director last week giving a briefing to reporters at the White House. Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Kane has talked about this extensively alongside Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was also at the White House today talking about this issue. That is a threat to the United States, and it is being handled, and information is coming out every single day from CENTCOM about the updates on what is happening. But another threat to our constitutional republic is when the intelligence community is weaponized for political purposes. You released new documentation this week showing what happened in the lead up to the impeachment of President Donald Trump in 2019. Can you tell us what you found and why now to release and declassify this information to the public?
Yeah, thanks, Katie. You know, first and foremost, it is always the right time to expose the truth to the American people about the deep state tactics that have been used time and time again, fundamentally to undermine the foundational principles of our republic, and in so many cases to undermine the decisions that the American people make when they cast their votes in our elections to decide who they want to lead our country. And so the documents that we released really pointed to the fact that the 2019 impeachment occurred because there were members of the intelligence community working directly with House Democrats, specifically Adam Schiff, who's on the House Intelligence Committee at the time, concocting this narrative, weaponizing the whistleblower process, lying and abusing their power, all to create this manufactured basis that Nancy Pelosi then used to drive this impeachment against Donald Trump in 2019. I'll hit the high points on these documents. There are details and hundreds of pages of transcripts that we released in conjunction with House Intel Chairman Rick Crawford. But the bottom line is this. Number one, the whistleblower, so-called whistleblower who came forward, presented no evidence and no first-hand knowledge. This is a person who had heard about a conversation that President Trump had with Zelensky, then went straight to Adam Schiff on the House Intelligence Committee. And this is where they came up with this false narrative. And this so-called whistleblower then went and filed a complaint with the Intelligence Community Inspector General. The other witness, so-called witness to this, is somebody who also had zero firsthand knowledge and presented zero evidence, someone who was also a co-author of the 2017 Russia hoax intelligence community assessment that President Obama had ordered be created in conjunction with John Brennan and James Clapper at the time. Again, no firsthand knowledge or evidence, and someone who said that even after reading the transcript, he didn't really see the issue there until the whistleblower had explained it to him. And lastly, the Inspector General himself, and this is really such a violation of public trust and the responsibility that we expect all of our inspectors generals to have, in that he didn't conduct a full investigation. He didn't even ask to see the transcript of the phone call between President Trump and Zelensky, and he admitted to Congress that he did not have any evidence that he was relying on. He had made a criminal referral to the Department of Justice based on this so-called whistleblower's complaint. Department of Justice came back and said there's nothing here. This Inspector General then went to Congress anyway and presented to them. All of this coming down to the bottom line of which this was a partisan political attempt, once again, to undermine the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump as President of the United States.
I want to get back to the Department of Justice in just a second, but you talked about the criminal or the referral and the lack of firsthand information. So in the lead up to the impeachment of President Trump, the standard was it had to be firsthand information. And then right before he happened to go through this impeachment process, the standard changed to being able to use secondhand information, even if it were unreliable and deemed unreliable by the Inspector General. Why was that standard changed?
This is something that, again, there's further lies being told in the transcripts of this former Inspector General Atkinson when he went and testified before the House Intelligence Committee, where he was directly asked this question that you're asking here now. And he's making claims, oh, well, the law required me to do it. That's complete nonsense. The law did not require him to do it. The responsibility is with the Inspector General to deem whether or not a complaint is credible and whether or not it is urgent. How do you find a complaint to be credible when there is zero evidence provided and there is zero firsthand knowledge provided, not only by the whistleblower, by any witness in this case, and when the Inspector General himself did not even request to see the documents that these individuals are referencing in their false accusations. And so it was obviously, to me, part of this plot to change the standard, which the Inspector General did, from requiring that there be either evidence or firsthand knowledge presented in order to determine whether or not a complaint is credible, to merely allowing for hearsay and nothing else. This fed into this manufactured narrative.
Yeah, is it ever appropriate for politicians to be working with the intelligence community behind the scenes on an impeachment probe?
No, and this is why the fact that the so-called whistleblower, instead of going directly to the inspector general and filing a complaint, the fact that this whistleblower went directly to the House Intelligence Committee and Adam Schiff specifically and his team really points to the politicization of intelligence and the intelligence community. And again, the whistleblower process, which is really egregious because it is the channel for those to come and report complaints about things like politicized intelligence and the tactics of the deep state being deployed.
Well, and then let's not forget that Adam Schiff repeatedly lied about having any contact ahead of time with this so-called whistleblower after the standards were changed so that they could move forward with this in a political fashion right ahead of an election year. But regarding accountability, today your office sent criminal referrals to the Department of Justice related to your findings in this case. Can you talk to us about why you decided to do that and which laws you believe were broken?
It's important to push for accountability. First step is exposing the truth to the American people. That is a huge step towards accountability because the more we shine a light on the truth of these deep state tactics to undermine our republic and the will of the American people, the more likely it is that we have hope for change. Accountability can come after the presentation of the truth, and in this case, documents that had not been released publicly before. I'm leaving it up to the lawyers and the Department of Justice to take a look at this and to determine the specific legal parameters, but it was important for us to refer this along with all of the information that we have so that the Department of Justice can do exactly that and investigate it.
Director Gabbard, President Trump has tasked you with ridding the intelligence community of political influence of weaponization. What is the status of that? And what is your message to those who say that you're coming out with this report as a distraction, there isn't really a political issue happening within the intelligence community, and that you're just using it as a way to get at Democrats in an election year? Why is this important?
You know, those who often respond with those kinds of diatribes and kind of a lack of substantive response to the real issue at hand really point to the fact that what we are exposing to the American people has such huge consequences, and it really points to usually the critics, the Democrat critics' culpability in this, both those who were involved and those who knew about it. The time is always right to expose the truth. We know that the deep state rot within the intelligence community has existed for a very long time, and it is very deep. As we continue to discover new examples of these tried and true tactics that have been deployed, unfortunately, time and time again, we're going to continue to expose that truth. Once again, just by shining a light on the truth, we have the opportunity for the American people to now recognize if they try to use these tactics again, we are all watching and we are all standing on guard because we stand to protect our republic.
Well, we hear a lot about the need to protect democracy, and I can't think of something worse than attacking our constitutional republic by politicizing and weaponizing the intelligence community against American voters and against the people that they elect. Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, great to see you. Thank you for your work, and I look forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
All right, Chris. So I want to get into a couple little things here with you, buddy. First off, I'm the only newscaster that was at the Pentagon on 9/11. I'm the only person who spent more time at the Pentagon between 9/11 and 9/17 more than any other person who's alive. Only the bodies of the victims spent more time at the Pentagon after 9/11 than I did. In fact, in the time from 9/11 until the 17th, I only left the Pentagon grounds one time for 12 hours. Nobody else stayed there that long. Just me and the victims. Now, for the last 25 years, or almost 25 years, I have debated hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of 9/11 conspiracy theorists. I have spent tens of thousands of hours researching 9/11. I've also produced an 8-hour documentary backing up all of the facts. To date, no 9/11 conspirator will agree to debate me publicly on a public forum. That's because all of them who have talked about debating me, I've smoked them and scared them so bad they won't come back. So the truthers for 9/11, bring it on. These other people that say that the video was of the plane smacking into the building was AI or didn't happen, that the video that they're showing is fake. There is no timestamp on the original video. How do I know? Because Tom Fenton is the one who petitioned to get the original video released. So the people who say that the timestamp doesn't match, it's a fake timestamp. So I welcome any of these 9/11 truthers or people who say something other than a plane hit the Pentagon or the World Trade Center. Bring it on. I'll bet you $1,000 that I will smoke your ass live on the broadcast. So bring your $1,000, put your $1,000 up first. We'll put it in an escrow with my attorneys. And when we're done, I'll take your $1,000. You don't think $1,000 is much? Let's make it 10 grand. Because I've already offered one of the guys who claimed he was at the Pentagon on 9/11. He was not at the crash site. I offered him $10,000 to tell me that he was at the Pentagon crash site on 9/11, to provide a single stitch of evidence that he was at the Pentagon crash site on 9/11. He wasn't. I have video proof that I was at the Pentagon on 9/11. Here it is. That's me right there in yellow. That is a Supercat. That is a British Special Forces vehicle used by the British SAS. The Arlington Fire Department was pumping 3,000 gallons of water into the Pentagon at this time, and it was flooding the entire area. I was the only one with a vehicle that was capable of moving around on the grounds and transporting critical equipment, as well as cribbing material, like you can see on the back of the Supercat right here. I can speak with authority because I was an authority at the Pentagon on 9/11. I know more about what happened in the first weeks and moments after the Pentagon was hit than almost any man alive. So these so-called truthers who want to debate it, bring your money. Put your money where your mouth is. This is on the evening of September 11th. We're putting in cribbing so as that we can go in and try to find anything that we can as far as body parts, as far as pieces of the aircraft, and to secure it to keep it from collapsing and killing us. So here we are loading up. And by the way, these beams that you see here, I carried those in from a tractor trailer that brought them out in the parking lot. I brought them in 4 tons at a time. Oh, glad to hear you were at the WTC. That's right. Well, actually, steel loses 90% of its structural integrity at 900 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, some people want to say that it was a jet, or excuse me, want to say it was a missile as opposed to a jet. Fact of the matter, it was a jet. Fact of the matter, there were itty-bitty pieces of people all over the place. What am I doing right there? That's me in the yellow shirt and the yellow hat. I was digging a hole in the ground. Why was I digging a hole in the ground? Because I was tired of people parts floating out of the building past our feet and going down into the drain. So I had the excavator dig a hole right outside of the front of the Pentagon where all the water was flowing out, and we put a pump there so as that the people parts that were in the Pentagon would float out from the front of the building and fall into this hole. Then we had a strainer over top of the pump so that it wouldn't suck up the people parts. And about every hour or so, I would go by that hole, take a little plastic bag with me, and pick out the people parts that I found in the hole. Now, I've lived with that for 26 years. In fact, there's many moments like that from 9/11 that I've lived with. And the people that want to say, oh, it was a missile. No, I'm sorry. After I've picked up the pinky finger of a 9-year-old girl and other people parts that were there, it wasn't until 2 years ago I even found out who that little girl was. So the people that want to talk about what 9/11 happened and what really happened there, again, tell them to bring their money and bring their facts. And I want to see what they're going to provide as so-called facts beforehand. And like I said, I'll bet them $10,000 that I will eat them alive. So come one, come all. Bring your money. This needs to be settled once and for all. I've got 25 years of research and an 8-hour documentary that's been on both YouTube and on Rumble. Plus, I've got a copy of it here on my server. So, don't think that I don't know about 9/11. I was there. Now, you'll see me, and I stopped the entire operation. And you're going to see every man there is standing still with the exception of two. And those two men are me and the excavator operator. The public can judge the debate. The evidence is obvious. So all the people with conspiracy theories, get your $10,000, put it in an escrow, and bring your ass on. Because if you can't prove what you say, I'm going to take your fucking money. So there's me looking around for my pump and my screen. Now, where does all this come from? It's real simple. Radical Islam. And what are the Palestinians? They're radical Islam.
When you live in a society where the firefighters are the heroes, little kids want to be firefighters. When you live in a society where athletes and movie stars are the heroes, little kids want to be athletes and movie stars. In Palestinian society, the heroes are those who murder Jews. We can't let this continue. We can't let this happen any longer. You cannot achieve peace if terrorists are treated as martyrs. Glorifying terrorists is a tremendous barrier to peace. It is a horrible, horrible way to think. It's a barrier that can't be broken. That will end, and it'll end soon, believe me. In Palestinian textbooks and mosques, you've got a culture of hatred that has been fermenting there for years, and if we want to achieve peace, they've got to go out and they've got to start this educational process. They have to end education of hatred. They have to end it, and now.
Now, well, I want this one instead of that one. Now, the Israelis have been under attack and abuse for, well, a long, long time, folks, even before World War II. And the Palestinians, they want to do one thing. That's kill all Jews. Here's a video clip of Amir Weitman, who was just a guest on our broadcast the other day.
I think we have to be honest and truthful with the public. I think this whole business about talking about complete, absolute, total victory where we destroy the Hezbollah and blah, blah, blah. This is
superlatives.
This is not, but it's worse than that. It's not serious. And it's creating expectations which cannot be met in reality. I think we should be more careful, and the Prime Minister also, and all the politicians within the Likud, within the right wing, within the government, and everyone in Israel, within the army, should be much more careful with the terminology that they are using. This is not serious, and this is harming Israel, because instead of saying, we're going to achieve full, total, and entire victory, crush the enemy to the end, when we know that this is not possible, because at the end of the day, the Hezbollah probably can shoot, has got tens of thousands of rockets, and to completely destroy their ability to shoot, we probably would have to pretty much occupy the entirety of Lebanon, which is not realistic. So we cannot, by force alone, completely dismantle the Hezbollah, because the Hezbollah sits on a sociological reality, which is the Shia public, the Shia community in Lebanon. So long as we do not convince this community that they cannot, they have to stop fighting against us, then there's still going to be some threat coming from there. We should be truthful about this. We should say the truth. We should not invent and pretend that we have abilities which we don't have, or only have at a cost which is not tolerable and acceptable, neither for us nor for the international community. And therefore, I think it's time to be serious about what we can achieve and what we can't achieve. But I think Israel has achieved a tremendous amount of success, and we're also in a much better position because we took our security zone, which is now empty of its inhabitants, which means that the ability of the Hezbollah, as the Prime Minister said, the ability of the Hezbollah to attack us with anti-tank weapons, with direct invasion, has been essentially reduced to pretty much zero. What they still can do, of course, is shoot Katyusha rockets. And can we stop this entirely? No. But we have degraded their abilities to a great extent, to a great deal, and I think that's pretty much the most we can do. And what we have to do is to hope that eventually this regime in Iran is going to collapse, which is going to lead to the collapse of the Hezbollah. And on one hand, and on the other hand, if we can't reach a regime change in Iran, then at the very least we have to carry on hitting the Hezbollah in different ways to reach a point where they are breaking and where the most, I would say, of the Shiite community just want to stop. Once this happens, we've won. Have we already reached that point? No. Are we considerably closer to reaching this point than we were 6 weeks ago? Certainly.
Now, there's a lot going on in the world other than just what's taking place with Israel and the Palestinians and the Iranian war. We still have the Russians. And the Russians, Shoigu warns Finland and the Baltic states, claiming that self-defense rights under Article 51 of the U.S. Charter, they are alleging, and this is the Russians, are alleging that Finland and the Baltic states are allowing Ukrainian drones to use their airspace, warning this could be treated as a security threat under Russia's interpretation of self-defense. Now, tensions across NATO and the Russian borders continue to escalate. Again, we have been telling you about the buildup of the Russians next to Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. We've been telling you about this for over a year. But that's not the worst part of this. We now know that the Russians are planning on attacking Gotland Island. That's right, Gotland Island, the one that we flew, the one that we've shown you. We're the only news outlet that has 3D models of the military bases on Gotland Island. KLW World News is the only news outlet that has flown Gotland Island and shown you where those military bases are and what equipment they have. KLW World News is the only news outlet in the world that has actually built 3D models of military bases and military installations that the Russians have been building up along the Baltic. And KLW World News is the only news outlet that has been quoted by other news outlets as uncovering all of this, not only in the Baltic, in Cuba. You got to remember, in January, I told you the United States was going to attack Cuba. In January, I told you that the United States was going to attack Venezuela. So we've shown you all of that. We've proven all of that. And we've provided the maps, the flight, the war watch, the satellite imagery, the 3D imagery. We've provided all of that to you to show you, our viewers, things that no other news organization in the world will show you. Even if they know it's the truth, they won't show you because they're part of the mainstream media. People like myself and others who are an authority on the topic, well, we're the ones that are sounding the alarm. The mainstream media is not saying anything. Now, we're going to do some changes here at KLW World News to work with the AI algorithms that YouTube and Gemini are now applying. So we're going to do our regular nightly news broadcast Monday through Friday at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, 7 Mountain, 6 Pacific. In doing so, we are establishing ourselves as authorities because KLW World News is an authority on this. I've been in and around the military for over 40 years, and I've been doing news about the military for over a decade. I was at the Pentagon on 9/11. I've worked with the military. I went and supported Ukraine against the Russians in 2014. So I can give you, in 2015, excuse me, I can give you insight that other news organizations can't. So we're going to continue to do that each and every night here, Monday through Friday. We're going to give you the news that you can't get anywhere else. The other show that we were doing in the meantime, the masterclass, we're still going to do those so that you have a deeper understanding of the topics. Additionally, I'm going to go through and show you guys a bunch of my inventions, or at least the ones they'll let me show you. So we're going to do breakdowns in the master class. We're going to talk about the PVS 14, night vision goggles. We're going to talk about thermal imagers. We're going to talk about encrypted radios. We're going to talk about the WIN, the Warfighter Information Network, and the WIN-T, Warfighter Information Network Tactical. We're going to talk about the TSC 128 Bravo, otherwise known as Trojan Spirit. And I will guarantee you, I can tell you more about the Trojan Spirit and its history than any man alive. How do I know that? I designed the TSC 128 Bravo. So to establish myself as that authority per YouTube's requirements, I'm going to give you an in-depth education as to the many programs that I've worked on over the years and things that I have an in-depth knowledge on you can't get from anywhere else. Now, some people may think, oh, Lee's just blowing his own horn. If you think that, go fuck yourself. I'm doing this because I'm required to do it to establish authority under AI, under Gemini and Google, as well as YouTube. Because right now, the AI doesn't know the difference between me, somebody with 40 years experience, or some troll living in their mommy's basement. So to establish authority, you have to prove authority, and proving that authority is what we will do. So if you want to be notified anytime there's breaking news, it's real easy. You can go to buymeacoffee.com, get signed up at buymeacoffee.com/KLW News. That way you will get notified anytime we're going live. If you want to be on the network and in the know all about what's going on in the world with over 100 channels of news, text, talk, chat, and information on your phone, our exclusive safety network, which, by the way, is being upgraded right now, as well as our roundtables. Like this Sunday, we're going to have an open roundtable talking about HF communications, solar, water purification, all the things you need to know because both China and Russia are getting ready to make their move. It's obvious now, especially with what China is building south of the South China Sea. And in fact, if you didn't watch the show today, live with Jeff, Johnny, and Lee, you missed a good one. Go back and watch that. So if you want to be part of the KLW World News Network, like you should be, go to klwworldnews.com, get signed up there for VIP, Platinum, or Gold. We've got members all over the world who are providing us with information, news every day that you can't get on the mainstream media. People come to KLW World News because they want the truth, and that's all we're going to provide you with. So I want to thank you for being here. We will see you tomorrow night, and we're probably going to do a War Watch here shortly on this channel. Plus, we'll be doing some additional broadcasts on Rumble. So thanks for being here. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.
That's all, folks.